Back in 2008, when other states had housing prices that were dropping like flies, North Carolina's home prices didn't really do much. They were a little lower in 2009 and 10 than they were in 2007 and 8, and you can see that the peak in 2008 was $205,000 and the peak in 2011 was $193,000, about a 6% decrease in prices from the housing crash. Not anything close to what other cities were experiencing. I love looking at old news. Look at this article from CNN Money in February of 2009. The National Association of Realtors reports that home prices dropped a record 12.4% in the final quarter of 2008, the biggest decline in 30 years. But don't stop at the headline. If you scroll down to the city-by-city declines and go past all the double-digit drops, look at this, 19%, 17%, 27%, 37%, and then there's Raleigh again with its little 2% drop. Last week, the Triangle Business Journal came out with a bombshell of a report where they did a deep dive into the North Carolina economy compared to the rest of the country. It's really incredible to see how different our economy really is compared to other places. In this video, I'm going to go through this report and show you the 4 reasons that North Carolina will again sit out the national housing crash. This video is for viewer Crystal, who always leaves the most thoughtful comments on my videos. I really love and appreciate the comments you leave. First, let me dispel some misunderstandings. I'm not saying that we won't see any choppy economic waters here in North Carolina, and neither is anybody else. You can see from the graphs I shared earlier that we've already seen an 8% decrease in the average home price in the Triangle. Now, I would argue that this phenomenon happens every year. Prices are always lower in the winter than they are in the spring and summer, and the 7 to 8% decrease is pretty common. And please remember that when we talk about average or median home price decreases, this doesn't tell us what a specific home is selling for. It tells us the average or median price that people are buying. So it's some kind of weird combination of overall prices decreasing, but also buyers choosing less expensive properties, making the averages lower. This actually, I feel like I really need to clarify this idea that the median home price is decreasing. I want to give you an example of my personal home just to give you an idea of what that means. I bought my home in July of 2022. I got it just as things were starting to calm down a little bit, and I did that purposefully. I keep an eye on the property value. The Zillow value in my area is pretty accurate just because there's not a lot of diversity in the types of homes that are built here. They're all similar ages and similar styles. So I keep an eye on that. And my home has decreased in value, according to Zillow, which is pretty accurate, by about 2.7%. So the total Triangle area has decreased in value 8% since I purchased my home, but my home has decreased in value 2.7%. And I think that's really important because when the property values decrease, what you're saying is the median home price for the area is lower. But that does not mean that every individual home is going to be 8% lower or 15% lower. It means that people are buying less expensive homes, which makes sense because interest rates are higher, so they cost more per month. So people are buying these less expensive homes, and that gives an overall property value decrease of a certain percent, but it does not apply to individual homes. This actually had a much bigger impact on home prices at the higher end than it does on the median priced homes. So what everybody wants to know is, might prices decrease this summer rather than increase like they normally do? That remains to be seen, but let's take a look at those criteria that are influencing how North Carolina's housing market is being impacted by the recession, and we'll start with the bad news first. Recession is likely coming. Charlie Dougherty, economist at Wells Fargo, says it's going to be a challenging economic year. We do expect the national economy to go into a recession starting in the second half of 2023. Dougherty believes there are signs that the slowing has already started in North Carolina. Mike Walden, economics professor at NC State, sees unemployment rates increasing between 5 and 6%, which would mean job losses of 50 to 75,000 statewide by the end of 2023. Last year, the 12-month average unemployment rate was 3.6%. Laura Dawson-Ulrich, economist at Charlotte's Fed branch, says that inflation remains at 6%. The Fed's target rate is 2%. We don't know exactly what the Fed is going to do to try and bring down the inflation, but we do expect they'll do something, and whatever that something is will have some kind of impact on the economy. Mark Vittner, chief economist at Piedmont Crescent Capital, says we could see something called a rolling recession, which for some reason brings to mind images of the Loch Ness Monster. Is that just me? A rolling recession is when different sectors experience recession at different times, keeping the economy dragging for a longer period. Vintner also says we're seeing weaknesses in the tech sector and in single-family housing, and Vintner expects a 15% drop in housing prices, including the drop we've already seen, which here in Raleigh is 8%. Now, having said all of that, I will say that the economists who are seeing the worst possibilities are definitely in the minority. Let's take a look at some of the reasons many economists think the triangle might miss the worst of the recession. The state of North Carolina consistently outperforms national norms for gross domestic product. The most recent data shows that our economy grew 3.2% compared to national growth of 1.9%. Economist Mark Vintner expects the North Carolina GDP to grow by 0.8% compared to his national forecast of 0.2% in 2023. Several economists in the report highlight the fact that population growth is a foundational asset to North Carolina's economy. First, a few facts. A very large baby boomer generation is retiring, and the generations behind them are smaller, too small to replace them in the workplace, which is one of the reasons why employers are struggling to find workers, even in an economy that's contracting. North Carolina has outperformed the country in population growth for at least a decade. Economist Charlie Dougherty expects that to continue. North Carolina is one of 26 states with higher birth rates than death rates. Add to this the nearly 100,000 new residents just last year, and we're seeing population growth that can sustain our economy. Last year, North Carolina's population growth rate was triple the national average. The number one thing businesses are driven by is a ready pool of workers. You cannot sustain a business without employees, and businesses are going where the people are. It's true that unemployment rates are expected to increase to somewhere in the 5 to 6% range this year. However, economist Mike Walden believes that the downturn in urban centers, Charlotte, the Triangle, and the Triad will be less. So Walden believes there will likely be more job losses outside of urban centers than within these cities. North Carolina outperformed the U.S. for annual job growth, 3.3% versus 4.3% in North Carolina. Wages, 4.8% versus 5.4%. And employment. North Carolina had a 5% employment gain versus 1% gain nationally. Economists believe these trends of outperforming national markets will continue even amid some softening. The development of megasites has been a bipartisan effort in North Carolina, and today's political leaders are continuing to work together to make more of these large tracts available for development. State Senate President pro tempore Bill Berger's top priorities, that is such a mouthful. State Senate President pro tempore Bill Berger's top priorities are developing megasites to entice large companies and lowering the individual tax rate in North Carolina. Yes, you heard that right. They are working on lowering taxes in North Carolina. The individual tax rate right now is 4.7% and is scheduled to drop to 3.99 in 2027. Berger's goal is to get it to 2.5% eventually. It was 7.75 a decade ago. From the Triangle Business Journal, Vintner, among others, said the types of banking jobs in North Carolina are less susceptible to the cuts now being made. Berger, the Duke economist, said that the ruptures within tech may delay some of the expansion in the Triangle, but the comparable affordability with Silicon Valley, Austin, Texas, and Miami should help retain investment interest. So, while no one's painting a rosy picture for 2023, the picture here is looking pretty good, all things considered. If you like this video, you might also like this one, where I tell you all about the risky stuff builders are doing with their inventory this year.